Welcome to the Mischief. I'm Vallen, and this is Thaumcraft. Today we're going to be teaching you the basics on Artifice. So with today's Artifice, we've got a lot of useful, well, gadgets, more or less. Not as much magic as before, but let's get started in on this, and we'll begin with basic Artifice. It's a very simple one to unlock. You just open it up, and then, of course, you've got your Goggles of Revealing. If you haven't already checked it out, you should have these by now. I highly recommend you get some because it will allow you to see aspects in your Crucible as well as other things that will help out later on, like in Fusion and so on. But this opens up several trees, and in fact, I see it now. You're all like, oh, Arcane Grappler, Arcane Grappler. Just hold on there. You might as well just go with the Redstone Relay. And therefore, all you need, at this point, you should have Potentium Machina or Machina, and just grab a redstone torch. There we go, I now have one, and I can complete that. And then I can actually make redstone relays, which allow me to kind of briefly show you how these work. So assuming that you've made one using this recipe, which, yes, there are simple arcane mechanisms. So before making one, though, let's go back to basic Artifice. And you see that there are several new little items down here. We've got your simple arcane mechanism, we've got your complex arcane mechanism, your mirrored glass, as well as your iron plates. These are all very basic things that you will need as ingredients for other items and tools. With that being said, Redstone Relay requires a simple arcane mechanism, which I will not be covering how to make those as we proceed, but now you are aware, there you go. On your arcane workbench, you make a redstone relay, which once placed down, has a couple little knobs and spots on it here, plus a little red redstone lever. You can see when I hover over it says in 1, out 15. If I take off my goggles, it still says this on here, so you don't have to have your goggles on, but it is a very convenient item to have nonetheless. So if I have redstone and I have it going in over here, let's do this, plus a couple levers. Might as well put one here, and then if you look, I can actually turn that on, and it currently says out 15 in 1, etc. I've kind of got this thing a little bit backwards. Let me re-put it down like so, and there we go, in 1. And it will therefore display an output over here, and you can see that it's saying in the top left there, power 15. So if I change this to output 1, therefore I can change the output level of the redstone that is going out so that it will display a different amount. And at the other end, you've got an input, which at this point will receive anything of 1 or higher, it will trigger the output. So if I change this to, let's say, 15, which is the highest I can get here, there we go. Oh, it's too high because this one here is power 14. This one is 15, so the closer you get to a redstone source, therefore the higher it is. And in this case, it's not going to trigger. So you have a lot of customization with this cool little device. That's pretty much it for a redstone relay. Now with that being said, yes, there are plenty more to go over. And in this case, we've got arcane ears, we've got Vis powered generators, we've got what the who's a what? Well, let's start with the arcane ear. This will require a little note block plus some census. Census, I recommend if you haven't already studied census for some reason, I recommend you just make yourself another thermometer because it should have some on it, and therefore you can just take one thermometer and scan the other one. There you go. Or you can toss it out on the ground and scan it simple enough, or put it in a chest as you desire. That's just a simple way of obtaining it. But the note block, of course, you will need to make one of those. In my case, I'm just kind of spawning it in, and I should be able to complete that. Done. And you've got two versions, Arcane Ear and Arcane Ear Toggle. Now the Arcane Ear will actually, when it hears a certain specified note, it will actually display that a redstone signal upon hearing that note. An Arcane Ear Toggleable will, instead of pulsing out a redstone signal, it will actually have an on-off, so it will just permanently switch to redstone mode on, and when it hears the same note again, it will turn it to off. So, allow me to demonstrate now. If I have a note block here, and I have an Arcane Ear here, I turn this the Arcane Ear, I can set it to, let's set it for 5. And it all depends on what you set your note block on as well. So if you, or your arcane ear rather, if you put this down on something or on the side of something that is, well, non-standard, it might act differently. So keep that in mind. If it's not working, you have it attached to something that it's just not really going to work with. So in this case, note 0, note 5. Let me get a bit of redstone here and we'll see what happens when I run this out. So if I change this to Let's make it 5. Oop, you just saw there that it had a little note come out and a little redstone pulse. Let's click that again. And you can see that it is currently displaying a redstone pulse on that. So you can have a remote redstone access using note blocks and arcane ears. And of course, if you choose the toggleable one, it will just turn that redstone signal on or off every time it hears that note that you specify. See, other notes, not doing it. And of course, that one will. Moving along, we've got the Vis power generator, and this actually works with tech mods. You'll have to do a little bit of research, get yourself a block of redstone and piston, plus have scanned something with potentia in it, and you should be good to go. So now that I have this, I can complete my research and move on. Of course, a V generator is made with a bit of rare earths, piston, redstone, and wood. Rare earths, you might ask? Well, that's going to lead us into this next area. We'll come back to the Vis power generator in a moment. So let's move on to the Infernal Furnace, which is actually going to be very, very important for a lot of Artifice, as well as, well, just about everything else. So let's make an Infernal Furnace. You need to have in your inventory obsidian, nether bricks, blaze rods, plus you have to have scanned something with Ignis, visit a hellish place, and observe Artifice. And by visiting a hellish place, guess what? You just need to go to the nether. So let me go do that. I'll be right back. And there we go. Now that I'm currently in the nether, I am able to complete my research as well as obtain a blaze rod. Complete that, and we'll move on. Alright, I have this little setup area here so that I can create the furnace that I need with the Infernal Furnace. And if you need to know how it's actually crafted, just click the little arrow down here. It tells you the total number of materials you need. Click this and it will start showing you the different levels so that you can easily make this for yourself. We just do it like this here, and you should have one spot left to put here. You want the grate to be in that spot, lava in the center, and of course obsidian on top. And you just leave it open. All you need now is a little bit of Salus Mundus, throw it on top, and you get yourself your Infernal Furnace, which is actually quite fantastic. And I love that this is here. I set this up so that I could get up on top, because if you get inside, bad things happen. Oh gosh. Now besides players, keep in mind that, well, anything that you toss in here may potentially be destroyed and no results will come out. But ideally, yeah, you see there I got some iron nuggets. The reason that I got iron nuggets is because if you were to have smelted those items, you would actually get an output. So what good is the Infernal Furnace? By itself, it's very slow, and it will eat items in the environment. But let me grab some ores. This is where it's actually very good. If I toss in a piece of iron, in this case, you'll see that it just kind of spits some items out in a few moments. It takes a little bit of time, but it is free. Doesn't cost anything. And oh, look at that. I got really lucky. I got some rare earths on my first hit. I got an iron ingot and an iron nugget, which is absolutely wonderful. But before you go just tossing everything in willy-nilly, know this, that if you use your thermometer here and you hold shift, you can see that there is already some flux in the area. 1. Not very much, and it doesn't give off a lot, but it will start giving off flux as it processes materials. So what you want to do is speed it up and use it selectively. To speed it up, you're going to want to make Arcane Bellows, which you should have observed some kind of Golemancy item, as well as an Air Vis crystal in your inventory. Once that's complete, you can then move on and make yourself an Arcane Bellows in your workbench, which of course will cost a little bit of Vis and another Vis crystal, a few mundane materials. I recommend making several of these because they can be used in multiple applications. Don't forget also that there's a new page added on alchemy that will allow you to actually increase your Essentia smelting speed as well with the new option from the bellows. And don't forget that by actually unlocking that, you now get a new page added to your Infernal Furnace. Scrolling over Addendum 1, attach an Arcane Bellows to an Infernal Furnace has shown some interesting results. Indeed it does. It speeds it up. And every spot that you see that has one of these little openings on it, you're going to want to put some of these Arcane Bellows so that you can enhance its speed and processing of power abilities. So you can't put it on top, but you can put it underneath. And in this case, I'm actually going to mine in underneath here. So I can put an Arcane Bellows underneath. There we go. And then I can just put this back. Doesn't need to actually be visible, just needs to be in place. And then when I throw things in there, it's very, very effective. Allow me to get a few more ores. In this case, I'm going to grab an entire stack of iron ore, throw it in there, and we'll watch the fireworks go. And you can see it's kicking out XP, it's kicking out iron, it's kicking out ingots, as well as rare earths, which, yes, that's right, rare earths. If you remember, we needed those to make this, the Beast Power Generator. With that in mind, we can then start making this up. So let's get one of those, and I can show you how this is used. In your Arcane Workbench, of course, using some of those new rare earths that you just got from processing different ores, you can also add in some wood, another little piece resonator, plus a little bit of extra stuff. You get this. And with it, what can I do? You can put it down next to a machine that takes some kind of power. It references forge energy and RF in there. I'm just going to say power because it works in most cases. You put it down, it'll instantly start adding 10 power per tick into your desired machine of choice. If you want to shut it off, just get yourself a redstone signal. I can put this down, turn it off, and therefore the power input has stopped. Well, that's it. So it works really good. Excellent. It's free stuff, right? Well, actually, it uses V in the aura. So therefore, if I have this running, let's see here. There we go. It is now running. I hold down Shift, and you don't actually see any kind of change in the aura because it's actually pretty high where I'm at right now. But if I were to turn that off, and if I were to actually use up a lot of the stuff in the area, you would notice that if I had like 12 of these running all at once or something, you would start noticing that there'd be a severe drop in the amount of, of the magic in the air. So don't spam those too much. You could easily use a few of them for free. Make sure that you have some kind of redstone signal on there to turn them off. Now this has turned into a big mess though. And I've got my XP flowing everywhere. How to fix this? Well, that's one of the other items in Artifice, and that is the Hungry Chest. This is really simple. You, of course, just need some observation with Golemancy, a hopper, and an oak chest in your inventory, and then you can complete it. By doing so, you then unlock the Hungry Chest, which is really, really dirt cheap. In fact, I've got one of these on here. I recommend you make several of these. They can be placed together. Whoops, here we go. It does require some beast crystals. They can be placed next to each other, unlike some of the, like your vanilla chests when they start getting like double chests and stuff. So first, let me pick up all this junk sitting over here, put this down, and anything that you drop on top of it, it will pick up. Actually, it might even be on the sides. Yeah, you throw things in and it will basically pick them up. And of course, you can open them standard, vanilla style. And in this case, it works really well with an Infernal Furnace. Let me grab a bunch of cinnabar ore. I'm going to throw in a whole stack of that from, let's just assume that I had some excursions going on out there. And you can see it's just chunking along and it's depositing all these goods in here. If you need rare earths, that's probably going to be your number one material to try and get those from. In my testings, I found you had about, on average, 5% chance of getting a rare earth every time you put in some kind of ore in here, regardless. So if it was like gold, iron, coal, lapis, diamond, redstone, emerald, all that stuff, you know, it all came out around 5%. The only one that actually had anything different in my testing was cinnabar. Came in around 10%. Oh, and I see some flux. That's right. We're still generating flux. It's very minimal. And it's possible that if you do a lot of smelting with this, that you could actually generate taint and have like an area jump in here with bad things happening. So you'll want to be cautious about that, but you should be all right otherwise. All right, moving on, we have Arcane Levitators, which are fabulous, very fabulous. You just need a little bit of observation and Artifice, and Feather would do for Volatives very easily. Complete that, and you can make one of these, Arcane Levitators, which require a bit of Nitor of any color, plus some of those simple arcane mechanisms, a little bit of V, and so on. So Arcane Levitators, once you've crafted them up, they have specific ways of being placed. You can actually place them down standard just by right-clicking, or if you shift right-click, you'll turn it upside down so it will face in the opposite direction that you just placed. And if you look on the back, there's this knob. There's two ways of accessing it. One is on the back, which then you can right-click and change how far this will actually push items or entities. And you can see it says, 4 blocks, 8, 16, and 32, respectively. And it will use V only while in use. So if there's nothing being pushed, no V is being used up. Now, if you are, well, up here and you want to access this, you can hold Shift, walk over it, aim at the center, and you can access that same spot. So you basically have like this little opening in the middle that you can reach through and change the adjustments on this. And if you let off Shift, it will actually float you and or items into the sky according to the height that you actually had it going. Now, of course, if it has some momentum when it's thrown on there, it will then continue with that momentum and fly off. Alternately, there are other ways of using this. Specifically, you can use it on a horizontal plane and not just vertically. And with that, it will allow you to go quite some distance. Let's see, we've got the 16, 32 blocks. So it should push 32 blocks, and I will stay in the air for that entire duration unless I move to the left or right or back or something like that. If I just continue on here, I'm floating. It's pushing me a good 32 blocks before it finally drops me off. Really, really cool. And of course, it works just the same with something else. You can have it move you really high up, 32 blocks. By pressing Shift, you go all the way back down. Not a problem. And you can have one pushing into another and so on. Just remember the whole momentum rule where if it's pushing you further away, you might actually overshoot things. But it can be used for item transportation, be used for player transportation. It's a lot of fun, and I highly recommend that you give them a try. And as with most of the devices, if you have some kind of redstone signal, it shuts it off completely, allowing you to, well, safely traverse the area, if not adjust your items without being blown across the map. So I also mentioned how this generates a little bit of flux. That can be measured, as well as other things that might generate flux, so that you can actually keep an eye on it and see how you're doing. That is the Thaumcraft dioptra, which requires a bit of observation on oromancy, and census and aurum, which if you have been paying attention, like I said before, your thermometer has those on them, so it's a really easy way of getting that. But once you've completed that research, you can then make that with a little bit of elbow grease, some arcane stone, and so on. So the Thaumcraft dioptra by itself is somewhat bland, but it can look really cool nonetheless. You set it down, and it will actually show you all of the vis in the, well, kind of the aura, how it looks, how much you have in the area with all the spikes and so on. If you want to check it out further, like how much flux is in the air, you can just right-click it, and it will show you on a map. This looks actually really, really safe. We haven't had any kind of big events here. It goes in, I believe, a 13 chunk radius. So each one of these little grid marks on here is actually representing a chunk. So it's pretty darn good. And as you use stuff up over here, you'll probably notice a change on here. Allow me to toss in some ores. All right, there we go. Throwing in some redstone, and I should start noticing over time a very slight depression, if you look here down in the center, of all the, a little bit of the vis being used up in the atmosphere. There we go. You saw that it just went down a little tiny bit. It didn't go down much because it doesn't use a lot for this, but you probably notice that it is being used slightly. So that's just an example of how this works in that aspect. Now, if you switch it over to flux mode, then you can also use it in multiple ways, like as a warning system. So I have in my hand a comparator, and it can actually give off signals, if you notice here, for how good or bad things can be. Now in this case, I'm actually going to have it come over here and show off how it can potentially be used in one way at least. It can be used in multiples, of course. But in this case, we've got lamps. And you can see it's got emergency status, right? So if I just right-click on this, it goes down into a dark status. No worries. Well, that's good because we don't want a bunch of flux. But if I get myself into a bit of trouble, you can see I have 10 redstone. Each one is about 10 potentia in here. Let me just toss it in. And then I'm just going to send it into the atmosphere. Now this should actually give a bit of spike, there we go, of the flux now in the area, which isn't going to give off much of a signal considering how much is currently there. That's not a lot. You can see it's already dispersing into the nearby areas. But if it did start getting to a higher level, you would start noticing a weak signal start pulsing off of this, therefore giving you some kind of early warning light up system or sounds or something of that nature, depending on how you wanted to hook up your redstone system. But it can be used in that manner. And of course, this actually isn't working in this exact area because it's in a different chunk. This chunk currently has a lot of flux. This chunk does not. Therefore, it's not going to work in the intended manner. So if I bring this into the same chunk, and then I repeat the same thing and drop a whole bunch of redstone in, evacuate it into the atmosphere, you'll notice a really big spike. And suddenly it's lighting things up and telling you, danger, danger. So you have to have this kind of in the specific chunk in order for it to work. And yes, I'm using a creative flux sponge just to eliminate that so that my entire place does not become overrun by taint. And of course, you can use your Thalmic Dioptra easily with a redstone relay, setting off all sorts of alarms, including you can also use your Arcane Ear to send remote signals. But let's move on to the Arcane Lamp. This, with a little bit of observation plus some lux, just get a torch, and you should be complete. Then you are able to make this. It's a really unique and helpful item to have as soon as possible, actually. So I don't know how many people end up trying to use their Thaumcraft or other whatever Minecraft stuff out in the world and end up getting exploded on because, well, zombies and creepers and spiders all show up. Well, that's where arcane lamps come in. If I put this here, I can jump up, put it on top, and you can mount it on the sides of things. For instance, I can put it on the side here and actually has a little mounting bracket on the back. It will also mount on the bottom or on top of things. And you can place it out. It will slowly, over time, start placing small light sources out to a decent radius, and therefore light up the entire area and prevent outbreaks in your nearby zone. So it's just a useful item to have. It doesn't require anything in order for it to work, but if you break it, all of the light sources it created will disappear as well. So that is something to be aware of. It's not just place it and it makes a bunch of light sources and then you can remove it and put it somewhere else. No. It's associated with all the light sources that it makes. So it's good to have a few of those around just to keep your place safe. And one more useful tool that we're going to cover is going to be the Arcane Pattern Crafter, which will require a little bit of research and your research table plus some Fabrico, which just scan a crafting table and you should be good. With that complete, I should be able to actually make myself an Arcane Pattern Crafter here, and now I can show you how it's used. So it's kind of a hopper, kind of a crafter, kind of not, kind of both. You'll see in just a moment. First, it's best if you have some kind of chest. In this case, I'm just going to use hungry chests because they're just infinitely cooler. And then I'm going to put this on top. And you can see it is this really interesting little hopper device. Of course, the recipe for it is going to involve a hopper plus some simple arcane mechanisms, a Vis resonator, and some great wood planks, all sorts of stuff. It's a little bit expensive, but it's an automatic crafting machine. And on the front is how it works. If you look here, there are dots, just like a regular crafting grid. By adjusting this knob, you can change how it will craft things. You put things in the top, it will then take it into the Arcane Pattern Crafter, deposit it into a chest below. And if I just have it convert these things, I could put, in this case, an iron ingot. And it would then take this item, process it into an iron nugget. Just as if you placed it in a crafting table, it would turn that into it. Now, if I end up adjusting this knob further, then I could potentially make some other things like this. That would be perhaps some wood in this case. If I take 4 pieces of wood, 1, 2, 3, 4, it will then take that, process it into a crafting table. And you can see that this has its definite advantages. I could take 3 iron ingots, and it will turn those into 3 iron plates, and so on. And it's just wonderful how you have these options. You can make yourself some furnaces or just compress things together, take all those nuggets that keep coming out of your Infernal Furnace, process them. And if something does not process, for instance, a crafting table isn't working, it's just not going to be taken. It's just going to sit in here. But then once I get enough of these, it might actually work. In this case, 9 wood is not actually going to get me anything. But these iron nuggets should start processing into iron ingots below. And it may have a very slight cost of the Vis in the atmosphere, the aura. Therefore, if you have tons of these running, then yeah, that could be a negative effect again. But therefore, it should be all right as it is. Okay, and now what you've all probably been waiting for, the Arcane Grappler. You should have access to this at this point, provided you have enough studying, and you now have some rare earths, because they will be part of the crafting recipe. There we go. I now have those items in my, or that rare earth in my inventory. I've completed my research, and you'll have a few new materials that you'll need to craft. It's not as simple as just crafting it up. You need to craft some of its sub-parts as well. The grappler head requiring several rare earths, a tripwire hook, and some more brass plates, vis, and so on. The grappler spool requiring simple arcane mechanism, a bunch of string and tripwire hook, plus other magical ingredients. Then the arcane grappler itself, which requires both of those parts, some iron plates, wood, and another piece of brass, plus of course your typical magical ingredients. And now that I have my arcane grappler, which of course is made as such, I can use it, right? No, I can't. Because if you actually look at it, it says vis charge 0. So, I don't know if you guys remember, but if you go back a little bit, if you remember in the Oromancy video that I have, we created a recharge pedestal, which is made as such, very simply in fact. I recommend you actually build it and place it in the world. Now, of course, there are many ways that you could feasibly actually recharge this item, but for now, this is your entry-level method. You place it on the pedestal, and in time, it will slowly start pulling just vis from the aura. As you can see, it's slowly going down, and it will start recharging this to 100. Now you might think, all right, well, how long is this going to last me? Every time you click this thing to launch its grappling hook into the air, it will then use up one of those uses. So if you look here, it now says 99. If I use it multiple times, it will then use it up multiple times. I'm down to 93. So it's a bit crazy. And you're thinking, all right, how do I use it? It's looking a little bit weird where it is right now. I mean, I'm trying to run away, and it's kind of like pulling me back. What's going on? You press sneak in order to let it go, or have it let go of things. And you're going to want to kind of launch a bit above it. And once you get to where you want to go, then you should be all right. If you need to get down, you can do so, but you have to be careful, because if you're in survival mode, you will take fall damage while you've got this thing on. So you're going to need to have some precautions. But if I launch up here, if I press shift at the right moment, I can fling over top of that item. It doesn't drag you directly to it. It kind of gives you a little bit of a spring up and over it. So you should be able to do that, but it also will stay latched on. So if you kind of had a precarious surface, you might, want to, this is a bit dangerous here, and then you can shift over on this little ledge instead. And like I said, if you do need to get up to a ledge, it's just going to, let's run up here and launch here. You see, it actually is smart in how it kind of pulls you up in most cases. Not all, but most cases. And it'll go a decent distance, like about 32 blocks or so. So you can actually just, launch this around, launch over here, and it's not going to grab on anything because it's just way out in the open. Remember, it's going to kind of launch in an arc. You notice it went over the one tree just there. So it's a really fun and entertaining new toy that I think all of you should definitely play around with, and probably die to a lot of fall damage because it's really, really fun. Anyway, I think that's about it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's Bit by Bit on Artifice. If so, be sure to give a like, comment, subscribe, and as always, be sure to spread the mischief to others. I think they'll enjoy this kind of content too. Until next time, I'll see ya.